Hey guys, you wake to the biting cold, a familiar companion in the deep Russian winter of the 13th century. The air, sharp and clean, stings your nostrils as you breathe, a thin cloud of vapour escaping your lips. You're deep in the ancient snow-laden forests, the silence profound, broken only by the soft crunch of your boots on the pristine white blanket that covers everything. The trees, skeletal and stark against the pale sky, stand like silent sentinels, their branches heavy with snow, casting long dancing shadows in the pre-dawn light. You're a hunter, your senses honed by years of survival in this unforgiving land, and something feels off. The usual forest sounds are muted, the rustle of small creatures, the distant call of a bird all seem to have vanished. A prickle of unease crawls up your spine, a primal warning that whispers of something vast and unknown approaching. You might not realize it yet, but the very ground beneath your feet is about to tremble, not from an earthquake, but from the thunder of hooves, thousands upon thousands, carrying an army unlike any this land has ever seen. An army from the distant steppes, supposedly ill-equipped for the deep snow and the bitter cold, yet destined to rewrite the fate of nations. How did they do it? How did a nomadic force accustomed to open plains conquer the vast frozen heart of Russes in the dead of winter? That is the question we will explore tonight, as we journey back to a time when survival was a daily struggle, and the world held its breath against the coming storm. Before we delve into the chilling depths of this historical tale, if you find yourself drawn into these immersive stories, please consider giving this video a like and subscribing to the channel. It helps more than you know, and as always, I'm curious to know where you're listening from. Drop a comment below with your city and the local time. I love imagining our community spanning the globe, sharing these quiet moments together. Now, dim the lights, adjust your pillows, and let your breathing slow. Allow the rhythmic cadence of this story to guide you as we prepare to step into the past, into a winter of conquest and resilience. You stand on the muddy, bustling streets of Kiev, the ancient mother of Rus's cities in the early 13th century. The air is thick with the scent of wood smoke, damp earth, and the distant aroma of baking bread. Merchants hawk their wares in a cacophony of languages, Norse, Greek, Slavic, their voices rising and falling like the tide. Carriages rumble over cobblestones, their wheels splashing through puddles, while priests in tall hats bless passers-by, their chants weaving through the marketplace. The Dnieper River, wide and powerful, flows nearby, a lifeline connecting this vibrant city to the wider world. You might not realize it, but this hustling scene, this apparent prosperity, masks a deep and dangerous fragmentation. The land you call Rus's is not a unified kingdom, but a patchwork of independent principalities, each ruled by its own prince, often squabbling and warring amongst themselves. Kiev, once the undisputed centre, now shares its prestige with rising powers like Vladimir to the northeast and the wealthy merchant republic of Novgorod to the north. Each prince sees his own domain as the most important, his own lineage as the most rightful. This internal strife, this constant jostling for power, is a quiet, insidious poison, weakening the very foundations of your world. Here's a historical fact. The political landscape of Russes in the 13th century was characterized by a system known as appanage principalities. This meant that after the death of a grand prince, his lands were often divided among his sons, leading to a proliferation of smaller, often rival states. This constant division and competition prevented the formation of a strong, unified defense against external threats. You feel the damp chill seep into your boots as you walk past the grand cathedral of St. Sophia, its golden domes glinting even on a cloudy day. The stones are cold, ancient, holding centuries of prayers and political intrigues within their silent embrace. You hear snippets of conversation, complaints about the latest tax, rumours of a skirmish between Prince Mstislav of Kiev and Prince Yuri of Vladimir. These are the concerns of the day, the familiar rhythms of a world that believes its greatest challenges come from within its own borders. The idea of a threat from beyond the known world, from the distant, mysterious steppes, seems almost fantastical, a tale for old women by the fire. Yet the seeds of your undoing are already sown, not just in the distant east, but in the very heart of this disunity. Years earlier, in 1223, a strange and terrifying event had occurred, a mere whisper on the wind that few in Russes truly understood. A combined force of Rus's princes and Cuman allies had met a mysterious army at the Kalka River, far to the southeast. The battle was a disaster, a crushing defeat for the Russes' forces, but the invaders, after their victory, simply vanished back into the steppes as quickly as they had appeared. It was a fleeting shadow, a terrifying omen, but one that was largely dismissed or misunderstood. You might not realise it, but this was the first taste of the Mongol war machine, a reconnaissance in force that tested the waters and found them wanting. The princes, instead of uniting in the face of this new formidable enemy, returned to their squabbles, convinced that the threat had passed. Fringe fact, some chroniclers of the time barely mention the Battle of the Kalka River, or attribute the defeat to divine displeasure rather than a superior military force. The sheer alienness of the Mongol army, their tactics, and their sudden disappearance made them difficult to comprehend within the existing worldview of the Rus. Now, as the year 1237 draws to a close, the whispers are growing louder, more insistent. Tales of a vast, unstoppable army led by a grandson of the legendary Genghis Khan are filtering in from the eastern borders. They speak of cities falling like dominoes, of entire populations put to the sword, of a relentless advance that defies the logic of traditional warfare. You hear these stories in the taverns, by the hearths, hushed and fearful. Some dismiss them as exaggerated travellers' tales. Others tremble, remembering the Kalka River. The air, already heavy with the coming winter, now carries an additional weight, the unspoken dread of the unknown. You feel a shiver, not just from the cold, but from the growing realization that something truly monumental is about to unfold. The emotional arc of this moment is one of dramatic irony. You, the listener, know the terrible truth. While the people of Russes are still caught in the twilight of their ignorance, their disunity a fatal flaw. Imagine the vastness of the Rus lands, stretching from the Baltic to the Black Sea, a mosaic of dense forests, wide rivers and sprawling plains. It is a land that has known many invaders, Pechenegs, Cumans, Swedes, Teutonic knights, but always from familiar directions with familiar methods. The Rus princes and their druzina, retinues of warriors, are skilled in forest warfare, in skirmishes along riverbanks, in defending fortified towns. Their castles, though not as grand as those in Western Europe, are formidable enough against their traditional enemies. But they are built for a different kind of war, a different kind of enemy. Scholars debate whether a unified Rus could have withstood the Mongol onslaught. Some argue that even a combined force would have been overwhelmed by the sheer numbers and superior tactics of the Mongols. Others contend that the lack of a centralised command, the inability to present a united front, was the single greatest factor in their defeat. What is clear is that the Russes were unprepared, not just militarily, but psychologically, for the snowstorm that was about to break. As you walk through a small snow-dusted village on the outskirts of Kiev, the smell of wood smoke is strong, comforting. Children play in the snow, their laughter echoing in the crisp airs. Life, in its simple rhythms, continues, yet beneath the surface a tension hums, a quiet anxiety that grows with each passing day. The sun, a pale disk in the winter sky, casts long, weak shadows. You notice the villagers looking eastward, their eyes scanning the horizon, searching for something they hope never to see. The world is holding its breath, and you, standing amidst them, feel the weight of that collective apprehension. The greatest threat to the Rus wasn't the army at their borders, but the rivalries within their own walls. This internal discord, this failure to unite would prove to be a far more devastating enemy than any foreign horde. The stage is set, the players are unaware, and the winter, cold and unforgiving, is about to become an accomplice to conquest. As you wander through the winding streets of Kiev, the sounds of daily life envelop you. The distant clang of a blacksmith's hammer, the rhythmic thud of a carpenter's axe, the chatter of women by the communal well. These are the sounds of a world that believes itself secure, a world that has faced its share of hardships but has always, eventually, endured. You pass by a group of warriors, their chainmail glinting, their swords at their hips. They are the druzina, prince's retinue, proud and formidable in their own right. They have fought many battles, defended their lands against steppe raiders, and returned victorious. Their confidence is palpable, a shield against fear, but their experience is limited to the familiar, to the skirmishes and sieges that have defined warfare in Rus' for centuries. They understand the tactics of their neighbours, the strengths and weaknesses of their traditional foes. They do not, however, understand the Mongols. You might not realise it, but this very confidence, this reliance on past victories, is a dangerous illusion. It blinds them to the true nature of the threat brewing in the east. The world is changing, but their understanding of it is not. Listen to the gentle rustle of the wind through the eaves of the wooden houses, a soft, whispering sound that carries the scent of pine and damp earth. Feel the cool, smooth stones beneath your hand as you lean against a weathered wall, observing the scene. The rhythm of life here is slow, deliberate, a stark contrast to the frantic pace of the coming storm. Here's a fringe fact. Many Rus' princes, despite warnings from their Cuman allies, initially viewed the Mongols as just another nomadic raiding party, albeit a larger one. They believed that once the Mongols had plundered enough, they would simply retreat back to the steppes, as other raiders had done before them. This fundamental misunderstanding of Mongol objectives, total conquest and subjugation, proved to be a fatal miscalculation. You see a young boy chasing a stray dog, his laughter bright and carefree. It's a poignant image, a snapshot of innocence on the precipice of unimaginable change. The emotional arc here is one of impending doom, a quiet tragedy unfolding in slow motion, where the characters are unaware of the script already written for them. The political fragmentation of Rus is not merely a matter of geography, it is deeply ingrained in the culture and the very fabric of society. Each principality, each city-state operates with a fierce independence, often prioritising its own interests above any collective good. Princes form alliances, break them, and wage war against their cousins with a casualness that would be unthinkable in a truly unified realm. You hear a heated argument erupt between two merchants over a disputed trade route, their voices sharp and angry. It's a microcosm of the larger conflicts that plague the land. The concept of a unified Rus' identity, while present in some historical narratives, is often overshadowed by regional loyalties and dynastic ambitions. This constant internal friction saps strength, diverts resources, and prevents the development of a cohesive defence strategy. What you might not realise is that this disunity isn't just a weakness, it's an invitation to any external power strong enough to exploit the divisions and conquer the whole. Feel the warmth of the sun now a little higher in the sky on your face, a fleeting comfort against the pervasive chill. The scent of burning leaves drifts past, a reminder of the changing seasons, of cycles that continue regardless of human strife. Scholars debate the extent to which the Rus' princes could have overcome their internal divisions to present a united front against the Mongols. Some historians argue that the political system was too entrenched, too decentralised to allow for such a rapid and fundamental shift in strategy. Others suggest that a charismatic leader, a truly unifying figure, might have emerged to rally the disparate forces. The truth, perhaps, is that the Mongols arrived at a moment of profound vulnerability, when the internal contradictions of Rus' society were at their peak. You watch a group of children playing a game, their shouts echoing through the narrow alleyways. Their world for now is simple, contained. But the shadows lengthen, and the whispers from the east grow louder, carrying with them the scent of distant dust and the promise of an unimaginable future. The illusion of security is about to shatter, and the fragmented heart of Rus' will soon face its ultimate test. Now, shift your gaze eastward, beyond the familiar forests and rivers of Rus, to the vast windswept steppes, where a different kind of life and a different kind of war has been forged. You stand on a frozen plain, the wind whipping at your clothes, carrying with it the scent of distant campfires and the faint earthy smell of thousands of animals. Before you, stretching further than the eye can see, is the Mongol army. Not a disorganised horde, as some in Rus' might imagine, but a meticulously organised, highly disciplined fighting force, honed by generations of conquest. You hear the rhythmic thud of thousands of hooves on the frozen ground, a sound that grows from a distant rumble to a deafening roar. It's not the heavy, plodding gait of European warhorses, but the swift, agile trot of the Mongol pony, an animal perfectly adapted to this harsh environment. What you might not realise is that the Mongols didn't just adapt to winter, they embraced it, turning it into their most formidable ally. For them, winter wasn't a time to retreat and hunker down. It was a season of opportunity, when frozen rivers became highways and snow-covered plains offered endless manoeuvrability. Here's a historical fact. The Mongol army was renowned for its speed, and mobility, largely due to their use of hardy small horses. These ponies were capable of enduring extreme cold, surviving on sparse forage found under snow and covering vast distances with minimal rest. Each warrior typically rode several ponies, switching mounts frequently to prevent exhaustion. You feel the biting wind on your face, sharp and invigorating as you watch the endless stream of riders. Their faces, weathered by sun and wind, are impassive, their eyes keen and alert. They wear layers of felt and leather, surprisingly effective against the cold, and their quivers are filled with arrows, each one a harbinger of destruction. The sheer scale of the army is overwhelming, a living, breathing force of nature. The emotional arc here is one of growing dread, as the sheer efficiency and preparedness of this invading force becomes terrifyingly clear. The Rus's princes, accustomed to their own seasonal warfare, could not fathom an army that saw winter not as an obstacle, but as an advantage. As you observe the Mongol encampment, a sprawling city of felt girs, yurts, dotting the frozen landscape, you notice the ponies. They are not the majestic, heavily armoured destriers of European knights, but smaller, shaggy beasts, their coats thick with winter fur. They seem almost indistinguishable from the wild horses of the steppe, yet they are the backbone of this conquering army. You watch as they effortlessly pour through the snow, digging for the dry grasses and mosses beneath. This ability to forage to sustain themselves in conditions that would starve a European warhorse is a critical advantage. It means the Mongol army is not tied to supply lines, not dependent on vast quantities of fodder that would be impossible to transport across frozen enemy territory. They are a self-sufficient mobile force able to strike deep and fast, even in the harshest months. Listen to the soft, rhythmic snorting of the ponies, a comforting sound that blends with the distant murmur of the camp. Feel the rough texture of a felt gare wall as you pass, imagining the warmth within, a stark contrast to the biting wind outside. What made the Mongol pony the ultimate winter weapon? It wasn't its speed, but something far more primal, its incredible resilience and self-sufficiency. Fringe fact piece. Mongol warriors often carried dried meat, borts, and fermented mare's milk, air egg, as rations, further reducing their reliance on traditional supply chains. This allowed them to maintain astonishing speeds and operational ranges, catching their enemies completely off guard. You see a warrior dismount, his movements fluid and practiced, and immediately begin tending to his pony, brushing its coat, checking its hooves. The bond between rider and horse is profound, a partnership forged in the crucible of the steppe. This isn't just an animal, it's a comrade, a lifeline and a weapon. The Rus's armies, with their reliance on heavy cavalry and infantry, were simply not equipped to counter such a mobile and adaptable foe, especially when the ground was frozen solid, making their traditional defensive tactics less effective. Now, turn your attention to the warriors themselves. They move with a quiet efficiency, a disciplined precision that speaks of rigorous training and unwavering loyalty. You see them practicing with their composite bows, even in the bitter cold, their arrows whistling through the air with deadly accuracy. The Mongol composite bow, made from layers of wood, horn and sinew, was a marvel of medieval engineering. It retained its power even in freezing temperatures, unlike many European bows which could become brittle. Each warrior could loose a volley of arrows with astonishing speed, creating a devastating hail of projectiles that could decimate enemy formations before they even closed for hand-to-hand combat. Feel the subtle vibration of the frozen ground beneath your feet, a deep hum that resonates with the disciplined movements of the army. The scent of wood smoke from countless campfires hangs in the air, a constant reminder of human presence in this vast cold landscape. Here's a historical fact. The Mongol army was organised into a decimal system, with units of 10, 100, 1000 and 10,000, a tumen. This hierarchical structure allowed for exceptional command and control, enabling complex manoeuvres and rapid communication across vast distances. Commanders were often promoted based on merit, not birth. fostering a highly effective and loyal officer corps. You watch as a two-man commander issues orders, his voice clear and authoritative, and the units respond with seamless coordination. This level of organisation was alien to the fragmented Russ's principalities, where armies were often ad hoc gatherings of feudal levies, lacking unified command or standardised tactics. The Mongols also excelled at psychological warfare, using rumours, feigned retreats, and overwhelming force to demoralise their enemies before the main engagement. They were masters of deception, often appearing to flee only to encircle and annihilate their pursuers. The emotional arc here is one of chilling admiration for their military prowess, mixed with the growing realisation of the hopelessness of resistance. The Rus were not just facing an army, they were facing a military system, a way of war that had been perfected over decades of relentless expansion. And this system, far from being hindered by winter, was uniquely designed to thrive in it. The frozen rivers of Ruses became the Mongol superhighways. You imagine the vast army, thousands of riders and their ponies, streaming across the icebound Dnieper, the Volga, the Oka. What would have been impassable swamps and dense forests in summer became firm, flat routes in winter, allowing the Mongol cavalry to bypass fortifications and strike deep into enemy territory with unprecedented speed. The snow, far from being a hindrance, often concealed their movements, muffling the sounds of their approach until it was too late. The Rus' defenders, expecting the Mongols to wait for spring, were caught completely off guard, their defences designed for a different season and a different enemy. Scholars debate whether the Mongols intentionally timed their invasions of Russes for winter, or if it was a strategic adaptation born of necessity. Some argue that the Mongol leadership, particularly Batu Khan and his brilliant general Subutai, recognised the unique advantages winter offered in the Rus' terrain. Others suggest that their relentless drive for conquest simply meant they fought year-round, and winter happened to be the season they encountered Ruses. Regardless of the intent, the effect was devastating. You feel the crisp, cold air fill your lungs, and you understand how the Mongols, with their deep knowledge of steppe winters, could turn the very elements against their foes. The Rus had always seen winter as a time of retreat, of huddling by the fire, of waiting for spring. The Mongols saw it as a time to ride, to conquer, to unleash the full terrifying power of their winter-hardened armies. The stage is now set for the first brutal encounters, where the Ruses will learn, to their horror, that the rules of war have changed, and winter is no longer their protector. You find yourself invited into a Mongol encampment on a bitterly cold night, the temperature plummeting far below freezing. The felt gers, circular and sturdy, dot the landscape like mushrooms after rain, each one glowing from within with the warm light of carefully tended fires. You step inside one such dwelling, and the contrast is immediate and stark. Outside, the wind howls with a ferocity that seems intent on stripping the very flesh from your bones. Inside, warmth envelops you, the ingenious design of the ger trapping heat while allowing smoke to escape through the crown opening at the top. The felt walls, layered thick and secured with woven bands, provide insulation that seems almost magical in its effectiveness. Listen to the soft crackle of dried dung fuel burning in the central hearth, a sound that has sustained nomadic peoples for millennia. Feel the rough texture of the woven wool rugs beneath your feet, each pattern telling a story of distant homelands and ancestral traditions. You might not realise it, but this ability to create warmth and shelter in the harshest conditions was a critical component of Mongol military success. While European armies huddled in drafty castles or inadequate tents, the Mongol warriors lived in mobile, efficient dwellings that could be erected in less than an hour and provided genuine comfort against the elements. Here's a fringe fact. The Mongol ger, also known as a yurt, was not just a shelter, but a sophisticated piece of engineering. Its circular design distributed wind pressure evenly, preventing collapse in storms. The felt covering, made from compressed sheep's wool, was naturally water-resistant and provided excellent insulation. A single ger could house an entire family, and could be disassembled and loaded onto a few horses in under 30 minutes, allowing for rapid mobility even in winter conditions. Morgan, David, The Mongols, Blackwell Publishing, 2007. You watch as a warrior's wife prepares air egg, fermented mare's milk, in a leather bag, rhythmically churning it with a wooden paddle. The slightly sour, mildly alcoholic beverage was a staple of the Mongol diet, providing both nutrition and hydration. Nearby, strips of dried meat hang from the jizz frame, preserved through a combination of cold air and smoke. This bortz, as it was called, could sustain a warrior for days without the need for cooking or elaborate preparation. The self-sufficiency of the Mongol household, the ability to produce and preserve food even while on campaign, was yet another advantage that baffled and overwhelmed their enemies. The emotional arc here is one of dawning respect and understanding. These were not mindless barbarians, as many Russ's chronicles portrayed them, but a highly organised, deeply practical people who had mastered the art of winter survival through centuries of adaptation. You feel the warmth of Mongol hospitality, the offering of a bowl of hot tea mixed with butter and salt, a gesture that transcends the coming violence. In this moment, you understand that the Mongol conquest was not just about superior tactics or numbers, but about a fundamentally different relationship with the natural world, one where winter was not an enemy to be endured, but an environment to be understood and utilised. As you sit by the fire, listening to the distant murmur of thousands of warriors settling in for the night, you overhear fragments of conversation between Mongol officers. They speak not of the next battle, but of messages, of rumours, of carefully cultivated fear. You might not realise it, but the Mongols were masters of what we would today call psychological warfare and information operations. Long before they arrived at a city's gates, the seeds of terror had already been planted. Here's a historical fact. The Mongols employed a sophisticated intelligence network, using merchants, prisoners, and even diplomatic envoys as sources of information. They knew the internal politics of the Rus's principalities, the feuds between princes, the strengths and weaknesses of fortifications, and the morale of populations. This intelligence allowed them to exploit divisions, target the most vulnerable cities first, and spread carefully crafted rumours about their invincibility and brutality. Chambers, James the Devil's Horseman, The Mongol Invasion of Europe. Athenaeum, 1979. The Mongols understood that a city paralysed by fear was a city half-conquered. They deliberately exaggerated their numbers, allowed survivors of conquered cities to flee and spread tales of horror, and used public displays of brutality not merely as punishment, but as theatre, as a message to the next target. You hear one officer describe how they would sometimes spare a portion of a city's population, then drive them ahead of the army to the next target, human shields that also served as walking advertisements of Mongol power. Feel the subtle shift in the air as the fire burns lower, casting dancing shadows on the felt walls. The scent of burning juniper, added to the fuel for its pleasant aroma, creates a moment of unexpected tranquility amidst the discussions of calculated terror. This psychological dimension of Mongol warfare was perhaps as important as their cavalry charges or siege engines. They understood that the mind was the first battlefield, and they fought that battle with the same ruthless efficiency they brought to the physical combat. The emotional arc here is one of chilling recognition. The Mongols were not just warriors, but strategists of fear itself, masters of breaking an enemy's will before swords were ever drawn. Let's transport yourself to the winter of 1237, to the proud city of Ryazan, nestled on the banks of the Yoke River. You stand on its wooden walls, the biting wind whipping at your face, carrying with it the faint, unsettling scent of smoke from distant villages. Below, the frozen river stretches like a silver ribbon, and beyond it, the endless snow-covered plains. The city is a hub of activity, a vibrant centre of trade and culture, its churches adorned with frescoes, its markets bustling with life. Yet an undercurrent of fear, a palpable tension, has settled over the populace. Whispers of the Mongol advance have reached these walls, tales of their ferocity and their seemingly unstoppable march. You might not realise it, but Ryazan is about to become the first major Russian city to face the full, terrifying might of the Mongol war machine, a grim precedent for all who would follow. The fate of this city will send a chilling message across the fragmented lands of Rus. Listen to the distant, mournful howl of the wind, a sound that seems to carry the weight of impending doom. Feel the rough, cold timber of the palisade beneath your gloved hand, a fragile barrier against an unimaginable force. Here's a historical fact. Ryazan was a strategically important city. controlling a key river route and serving as a major defensive outpost on the southeastern frontier of Rus. Its fall would open the path to the heartland of the principalities. You watch as the city's defenders, a mix of professional warriors and hastily conscripted townsfolk, prepare for the inevitable. Their faces are grim, their movements heavy with a sense of foreboding. They are brave, yes, but they are also human, and the stories of Mongol brutality have already begun to chip away at their resolve. The emotional arc here is one of growing despair, as the illusion of safety behind the city walls begins to crumble under the weight of an unseen, yet deeply felt threat. Then they arrive, not with a sudden, thunderous charge, but with a slow, deliberate advance that is far more terrifying. You see them first as a dark smudge on the horizon, a growing stain against the pristine white of the snow. As they draw closer, the smudge resolves into countless figures, a sea of horsemen, their banners snapping in the wind, their armour glinting dully in the pale winter sun. The ground begins to tremble, a low, resonant hum that vibrates through the very stones of the city walls. The air fills with the rhythmic thud of thousands of hooves, the guttural shouts of commanders, and the chilling, high-pitched cries of the Mongol warriors. It is a sound unlike any you have ever heard, a sound that speaks of overwhelming numbers and an alien, relentless will. You might not realise it, but this is the psychological warfare of the Mongols at play, an intentional display of force designed to break the enemy's spirit before the first arrow is even loosed. Close your eyes for a moment and focus on the steady rhythm of your own breath, a small anchor in the rising tide of chaos. The scent of pine resin from the wooden walls is sharp, almost medicinal, a fleeting comfort. Fringe fact, the Mongols often employed a tactic known as Tumen formations, where units of 10,000 warriors would advance in a wide, intimidating front, creating the illusion of an even larger, endless army. This visual and auditory spectacle was designed to induce panic and demoralize defenders. You feel a cold knot of fear tighten in your stomach as you witness the sheer scale of the invading force. The city, once a bustling centre of life, now feels small, vulnerable, a lone island surrounded by an ocean of steel and fury. The defenders on the walls exchange nervous glances, their bravado giving way to a dawning realization of the impossible odds they face. The emotional arc shifts from fear to a desperate, clinging hope as the city prepares for a siege unlike any it has ever known. The Mongols do not waste time. Almost immediately the siege begins, but it is not the kind of siege the Ruses are accustomed to. There are no long, drawn-out blockades, no patient attempts to starve the city into submission. Instead, the Mongols bring with them a terrifying array of siege engines, technologies borrowed and perfected from their conquests in China and Persia. You hear the ominous creak and groan of massive catapults being assembled, their wooden arms reaching towards the sky like skeletal giants. The air fills with the shouts of engineers, the clang of hammers, and the rhythmic thud of logs being hoisted into place. Soon, massive stones begin to arc through the air, crashing against the wooden walls with bone-jarring force, splintering timber and sending showers of debris across the ramparts. The Rus' defenders, skilled in their own methods of defence, find themselves facing a level of technological sophistication they cannot match. Here's a historical fact. The Mongols were highly adept at adopting and integrating siege technologies from the cultures they conquered. They employed Chinese engineers who brought with them advanced trebuchets and catapults capable of hurling massive projectiles, including incendiary devices, with devastating accuracy. You feel the impact of a stone against the wall near you, a jarring tremor that runs through your entire body. The smell of burning pitch and smoke begins to mingle with the cold winter air. An acrid, suffocating scent that speaks of destruction. The cries of the wounded, the desperate shouts of commanders, and the relentless thud of siege engines create a terrifying symphony of war. Focus on the steady, rhythmic beat of your own heart, a small, defiant pulse against the overwhelming chaos. The cold, smooth stone of the wall beneath your hand offers a momentary sense of solidity amidst the destruction. Fringe fact, Mongol siege engineers were known to construct siege engines on site, often using timber from local forests, allowing them to rapidly deploy their destructive capabilities against fortified cities without the need for lengthy transport. The emotional arc here is one of shock and awe, as the Rus's defenders grapple with an enemy that fights by a different set of rules, an enemy that seems to possess an endless supply of destructive power. The city is under assault not just by force but by a terrifying display of ingenuity and relentless will. The assault is relentless day and night, a ceaseless barrage of stones, arrows and fire. The Mongols, unlike European armies, do not retreat at night. They maintain their pressure, their campfires burning brightly, their drums beating a steady, unnerving rhythm that echoes across the frozen landscape. You watch as sections of the wooden palisade begin to splinter and collapse under the sustained bombardment. Breaches appear, gaping wounds in the city's defences, and through them the Mongol warriors surge, a terrifying wave of steel and fury. The fighting becomes desperate, hand to hand, a brutal melee in the narrow streets and alleys. The cries of battle, the clash of swords, the screams of the dying all blend into a horrifying cacophony. You might not realise it, but the Mongols' ability to fight continuously, without respite, was a key factor in their success against cities accustomed to more conventional, seasonal warfare. Allow your gaze to drift to the swirling snowflakes, each one unique, dancing in the flickering light of the burning city. The cold, crisp air fills your lungs, a stark contrast to the heat and smoke of the battle. Scholars debate the exact duration of the siege of Ryazan, with some accounts suggesting it lasted only a few days, while others claim it stretched for nearly a week. What is clear is that the speed and intensity of the Mongol assault overwhelmed the city's defences, leaving little time for reinforcements or organised resistance. You find yourself fighting alongside your neighbours, a farmer, a merchant, a craftsman, all united in a desperate, futile defence. The emotional arc here is one of raw, primal survival, a desperate struggle against overwhelming odds where every moment is a fight for life itself. The city is falling, and with it, a way of life is being extinguished in a blaze of fire and blood. Then, as suddenly as it began, it ends. The sounds of battle fade, replaced by an eerie, chilling dwellance. The smoke hangs heavy in the air, a pall over the burning ruins of Ryazan. You walk through the devastated streets, your boots crunching on shattered timber and frozen earth. The once proud city is a wasteland, its buildings reduced to charred skeletons, its people gone. The silence is profound, broken only by the crackle of distant fires and the mournful cries of crows circling overhead. It is a silence that speaks of utter annihilation, a stark warning to any who would dare to resist the Mongol will. You might not realise it, but this brutal destruction was a deliberate tactic, a message carved in fire and blood designed to instill terror and discourage further resistance across Rus. Feel the cold, hard ground beneath your feet, a solid, unchanging presence amidst the devastation. The faint scent of wood smoke, though acrid, is also a reminder of the warmth that once filled these homes. Fringe fact: the legend of the Ryazan boyar Evpati Kolovrat tells of a small detachment of warriors who, returning to find their city destroyed, pursued the Mongol army and fought with such ferocity that even the Mongols were impressed. Though ultimately defeated, Kolovrat's stand became a symbol of Rus's defiance. The emotional arc here is one of profound loss and a dawning realisation of the true cost of conquest. The city of Ryazan, once a beacon of Rus's culture, is now a ghost, its memory a chilling testament to the power of the Winter Riders. The silence is not peaceful, it is heavy with the weight of countless lost lives, a silence that will echo across the lands of Russes for generations to come. From the ashes of Ryazan, a desperate call echoes across the fragmented lands of Rus. The princes, finally stirred from their complacency by the brutal reality of the Mongol threat, begin to gather their forces. You find yourself among them, a warrior from Vladimir, marching south towards Kolomna, a strategic town on the Yoke River. The air is heavy with a grim determination, a sense of last stand. The combined armies of Vladimir, Suzdal, and other smaller principalities form a formidable host, their banners fluttering defiantly against the pale winter sky. The ground beneath your feet, still frozen solid, vibrates with the rhythmic march of thousands of men, the clatter of their armour, and the low murmur of prayers. You might not realise it, but this is the largest Russ's army ever assembled to face a single foe, a testament to the terror inspired by the Mongols. Yet even in this moment of unity, the old divisions linger, abyss, subtle tension beneath the surface, a whisper of distrust between princes who have, until recently, been enemies. Listen to the steady rhythmic crunch of snow under thousands of boots, sound that is both comforting in its unity and unsettling in its scale. Feel the cold, smooth steel of your sword hilt, a familiar weight in your hand, a promise of the battle to come. Here's a historical fact. The Rus' forces at Kolomna were led by Prince Roman Ingvarovich of Ryazan, a survivor of the initial Ryazan campaign, and Prince Vsevolod Yuryevich of Vladimir, son of Grand Prince Yuri II. This was a rare instance of multiple Rus' principalities combining their military strength against a common enemy. You look at the faces around you, young and old, hardened veterans and fresh recruits, all bound by a shared fear and a desperate hope. The emotional arc here is one of fragile hope, a fleeting belief that sheer numbers and righteous fury might yet turn the tide against the seemingly invincible invaders. The stage is set for a confrontation that will determine the fate of Central Rus. As the Rus' army approaches Kolomna, the landscape opens up, a vast, snow-covered plain stretching to the horizon. The Mongols, ever the masters of reconnaissance, are already aware of the approaching host. They do not meet the Rus head-on in a pitched battle, a tactic that would play into the Rus' strengths of heavy infantry and close-quarters combat. Instead, they employ their signature strategy: deception, maneuver, and encirclement. You see the first signs of their presence. Small groups of Mongol horse archers darting across the plain like shadows, harassing the flanks of the Rus' army, then vanishing as quickly as they appeared. They are testing the Rus' defences, drawing them out, luring them into a trap. You might not realise it, but this is the beginning of a deadly dance, a carefully choreographed ballet of destruction where the Mongols dictate every step. Feel the biting wind on your exposed skin, a sharp reminder of the vast open space around you. The scent of wood smoke from distant Mongol campfires, carried on the wind, is a chilling premonition of what awaits. Fringe fact: the Mongol general Subutai, a brilliant strategist who had served Genghis Khan, was likely the mastermind behind the tactical deployment at Kolomna. His experience in numerous campaigns across Asia made him an unparalleled expert in large-scale maneuver warfare. You feel a growing sense of unease as the Mongol skirmishers refuse to engage in a decisive fight, always retreating, always drawing the Rus' deeper into the open plain. The Rus' commanders, eager to engage the enemy and avenge Ryazan, push their forces forward, unknowingly playing directly into the Mongols' hands. The emotional arc here is one of mounting tension, a slow, agonizing realization that the battle is not unfolding as expected, that the enemy is always one step ahead. Then the trap springs. From seemingly nowhere, the main body of the Mongol army appears, not in a single predictable line, but in multiple sweeping formations, encircling the Rus' forces with terrifying speed. The air fills with the terrifying whistle of thousands of arrows, a dark cloud descending upon the Rus ranks. The Mongol cavalry, light and agile, ride in tight formations, loosing volleys of arrows, then wheeling away before the Rus' heavy infantry can close the distance. They are like a swarm of angry bees, stinging and retreating, slowly but surely wearing down the enemy. You hear the desperate shouts of your commanders, urging the men to hold the line, to push forward, but the sheer volume of arrows is devastating. Men fall, their cries muffled by the snow, their blood staining the pristine white a vivid, horrifying red. Focus on the rhythmic thud of your own heart, a frantic drumbeat against the overwhelming sounds of battle. The cold, metallic tang of blood in the air is a stark, visceral reminder of the brutal reality unfolding around you. Here's a historical fact. The Mongol tactic of the feigned retreat was particularly effective. They would pretend to flee, drawing the enemy into a disorganized pursuit, only to turn and encircle them, unleashing devastating volleys of arrows from all sides. You find yourself surrounded, the faces of your comrades grim and determined, but also etched with fear. The ground beneath your feet becomes slick with blood and trampled snow, a gruesome tableau of death and despair. The Rus' heavy cavalry, once their pride, struggles to maneuver in the deep snow and against the relentless hail of arrows. Their charges are broken, their formation shattered. The emotional arc here is one of desperate struggle. a losing battle fought with courage and futility, as the red snow of Kolomna bears witness to the crushing defeat of Rus's might. The battle rages for hours, a brutal, relentless slaughter. The Ruses fight with courage, but they are outmaneuvered, outmatched, and ultimately overwhelmed. The Mongol cavalry archers, with their superior mobility and devastating firepower, systematically dismantle the Ruses' formations. You see your comrades fall one by one, their bodies piling up on the snow-covered plain. The cries of the wounded mingle with the triumphant shouts of the Mongols, a chilling testament to their victory. Prince Roman Ingvarovich of Ryazan falls in battle, a valiant but ultimately futile sacrifice. Prince Vsevolod Yuryevich of Vladimir manages to escape, but the bulk of the Ruses' army is annihilated. You might not realise it, but the Battle of Kolomna was a decisive victory for the Mongols, effectively eliminating the main organised resistance in central Rus and opening the path to the Grand Principality of Vladimir. Allow your gaze to drift to the swirling snowflakes, each one a tiny, fleeting moment of beauty amidst the horror. The cold, crisp air fills your lungs, a stark contrast to the suffocating despair of defeat. Scholars debate the exact number of casualties at Kolomna, but all accounts agree that the Ruses suffered catastrophic losses, effectively crippling their ability to mount a unified defence. You stand amidst the carnage, your body aching, your spirit broken, the silence after the battle more terrifying than the battle itself. The emotional arc here is one of profound loss and the bitter taste of defeat, a realisation that the world you knew is irrevocably changed. The red snow of Kolomna is not just a memory, it is a scar, a permanent reminder of the day the Mongol tide swept over Rus, leaving behind only destruction and despair. In the swirling chaos of the Battle of Kolomna, history often loses the individual faces, the personal tragedies that unfold on every battlefield. Let us pause for a moment and zoom in, not on the grand strategies or the movements of thousands, but on the experiences of a handful of souls caught in this maelstrom of steel and snow. You are Mikhail Chil, a young Druzina warrior from Vladimir, barely 20 winters old. This is your first major battle. You stand in the shield wall, your breath coming in ragged gasps that freeze instantly into icy crystals on your beard. The man to your left, Sergei, is your cousin. You grew up together, learning to ride and fight in the forests around your village. The man to your right is a grizzled veteran named Boris, who fought against the Swedes in his youth and carries scars that tell stories of dozens of skirmishes. As the Mongol arrows begin to fall, you hear Boris mutter a prayer, his voice steady despite the terror in his eyes. Focus on the rhythmic sound of your own breathing, the white clouds forming with each exhalation, a visual reminder that you are still alive, still present in this moment. Feel the smooth, worn leather of your sword grip, shaped by your own hand over months of practice and preparation. The first volley arrives like a dark cloud eclipsing the pale sun. You hear the whistle, a sound that seems to stretch for an eternity, then the thud of impact. Arrows strike shields, armour, and flesh with sounds that are both sharp and wet. Sergei cries out, an arrow buried in his thigh. He stumbles, but stays in line, his face contorted in pain but also fierce determination. This is not a battle for conquest or glory. This is a fight for survival, for your families, for the very right to exist as free men. Here's a fringe fact. The Ruses' Druzina were not merely soldiers, they were a professional warrior class, bound to their prince by oaths of loyalty and often blood ties. They trained from childhood in horsemanship, swordsmanship, and tactics. However, their experience was primarily in smaller-scale conflicts and forest warfare. The open-field battle against a mobile, archery-focused enemy like the Mongols was outside their usual operational paradigm in a cold, David, medieval Russian armies 1250 to 1500. Osprey Publishing. 2002. You watch as a group of Mongol horse archers wheel in formation barely 100 paces away, their composite bows drawn. They release in unison a technique called a storm of arrows, where hundreds of shafts fill the air simultaneously. You raise your shield, feeling the impacts reverberate through the wood and into your arm. One arrow punches through, the tip stopping inches from your face. You smell the wood, the iron, the proximity of death. Boris is shouting orders, telling the men to hold. to wait for the cavalry charge that will surely come, but the charge doesn't come. The Mongols wheel away, disappearing into the swirling snow, only to reappear moments later from a different direction. Now, shift your perspective. You are Temur, a Mongol warrior in the Tumen commanded by Subutai himself. You are 35, a veteran of campaigns in China and Persia, and this cold, this snow, reminds you of your homeland. Your pony beneath you is your third of the day. You have already switched twice to keep them fresh. You carry 60 arrows in your quiver, and you have loosed perhaps 20 so far. Your arm aches, not from fatigue, but from the repetitive motion, the constant draw and release that has become as natural to you as breathing. Listen to the rhythmic breathing of your pony, its warm breath visible in the cold air, a steady companion in the chaos. Feel the smooth, worn wood of your bow, a weapon that has been with you for a decade, shaped by your hand, its pull weight perfectly calibrated to your strength. You observe the Russes' formation with a professional eye. They are brave, you acknowledge that. They hold their line despite the arrow storm, despite watching their comrades fall. But they are also predictable, standing in place waiting for an engagement that will come on your terms, not theirs. You and your brothers have been executing the Tulugma, the standard Mongol feigned retreat and encirclement maneuver, dozens of times. You know it so well that you can execute it while half asleep. Your commander signals, you wheel your pony to the left, part of a coordinated movement involving thousands of warriors. From the Rus's perspective, it looks like chaos, like you are retreating or repositioning randomly. From your perspective, it is a dance, a carefully choreographed ballet, where every movement has a purpose. You are tightening the noose, drawing them deeper into the trap. You feel a cold satisfaction, not cruelty, but the professional pride of a craftsman executing his art perfectly. Here's a historical fact. Mongol warriors were trained from childhood in mounted archery and complex cavalry maneuvers. They practiced shooting accurately while riding at full gallop, hitting targets behind them, the famous Parthian shot, and coordinating movements through a system of signals using flags, justas, and horns. This level of training and discipline was unmatched by any contemporary force. May, Timothy. The Mongol Art of War. Westholm Publishing, 2007. You loose another arrow, not at a specific target, but into the mass of the enemy formation. You are contributing to volume, to the psychological pressure, to the gradual erosion of their morale and cohesion. You see one of your arrows strike a Russ's warrior in the chest. He falls. You feel nothing, not hatred, not satisfaction, just the cold awareness of a task being executed. This is your profession, your duty to your Khan, to your Ulus, clan. The Rus are the enemy today, but tomorrow it might be the Poles or the Hungarians. The specifics don't matter. The method is always the same. Back to Mikhail's perspective. Hours have passed, though it feels like an eternity. The snow beneath your feet, once pristine white, is now a churned muddy mick of red and brown. Bodies lie scattered, both friend and foe, though the ratio is grimly uneven. Sergei is still beside you, pale and weakening from blood loss, but refusing to fall back. Boris is silent, his eyes tracking the Mongol movements with a look of growing desperation. You can feel it in the air, a shift, a subtle change in the pressure. The shield wall is thinning, gaps appearing as men fall, and there are no replacements to step forward. Then you see them coming, not another arrow volley, but a massed cavalry charge. Mongol heavy cavalry, rare in their deployment but devastating in impact. They thunder across the snow, lances lowered, a wall of steel and horseflesh. This is the moment the Mongols have been building towards, the moment when the Russes' formation is weakened, disorganized and demoralized. The impact is catastrophic. The shield wall shatters like glass. Men are thrown backwards, trampled, impaled. The world dissolves into a nightmare of screaming horses, shouting men, and the sickening sound of steel on flesh. In the midst of this horror, focus on a single snowflake drifting down from the pale sky, delicate and beautiful, untouched by the violence below. It is a reminder that the world continues, that nature is indifferent to human suffering, that even in the darkest moment there is beauty and continuity. You find yourself on the ground, unsure how you got there. Your sword is gone, your shield is splintered. You see Sergei motionless, his eyes staring unseeing at the sky. Boris is fighting still, surrounded by Mongol warriors, swinging his axe in wide, desperate arcs. Then he too falls. You lie still, playing dead, the cold snow against your cheek almost comforting. Above you the battle continues, but for you, it is over. The emotional arc here is one of profound trauma and loss, the shattering of innocence, and the stark realization of mortality. This is not a glorious tale of heroism, but the brutal, chaotic reality of medieval warfare, where survival is often a matter of chance, not valour. From the blood-soaked fields of Kolomna, the Mongol tide rolls onward, relentless and unstoppable. You are now a resident of Vladimir, the proud capital of the Grand Principality, a city renowned for its magnificent Golden Gate, its towering cathedrals, and its strategic position. The news of Ryazan's fall and the catastrophic defeat at Kolomna has reached your ears, carried by terrified refugees and grim-faced survivors. A palpable fear grips the city, a cold dread that seeps into every stone and every heart. Grand Prince Yuri II, having escaped Kolomna, has left Vladimir to gather a larger army in the north, leaving his family and the city's defence to a smaller garrison. You might not realise it, but this decision, born of desperation, will prove to be a tragic miscalculation, leaving the heart of Russes vulnerable to the approaching storm. Listen to the distant muffled tolling of church bells, a sombre rhythm that echoes through the snow-laden streets, a prayer for deliverance. Feel the cold, smooth stone of the Golden Gate as you pass beneath it, a symbol of strength that now feels fragile against the coming onslaught. Here's a historical fact. Vladimir was not only the political capital, but also a significant cultural and religious centre of northeastern Rus. Its capture would be a devastating blow to the morale and identity of the Rus's people. You watch as the city's inhabitants, a mix of nobles, merchants, and common folk, prepare for the inevitable. Some pray, some hoard supplies, some simply stare eastward, their faces etched with a profound sense of helplessness. The emotional arc here is one of growing anxiety and a desperate clinging hope that the city's formidable defences might somehow withstand the Mongol fury. Then, just as at Ryazan, they appear, not with a sudden, chaotic rush, but with a slow, deliberate advance that is far more chilling. You see them first as a dark, undulating mass on the horizon, a silent, terrifying army emerging from the snow-covered plains. The air grows heavy, not just with the cold, but with an oppressive silence that precedes a great storm. The usual sounds of the city, the chatter of voices, the clatter of carts, the distant cries of children, all fade, replaced by an eerie stillness. The Mongols, in this front in their methodical approach, seem to drain the very life and sound from the landscape. You might not realise it, but this deliberate, terrifying silence is a psychological weapon designed to amplify fear and break the will of the defenders before the first blow is struck. Focus on the gentle, almost imperceptible drift of snowflakes, each one a tiny, silent dancer in the vast, cold air. The scent of wood smoke, usually comforting, now carries a hint of fear, a premonition of burning. Fringe fact: Mongol armies often employed scouts and advance parties to spread rumours and terror ahead of their main force, further demoralising the population and encouraging surrender or flight. This psychological warfare was as potent as their physical weapons. You feel a shiver run down your spine, not from the cold, but from the profound sense of dread that permeates the air. The city walls, once a source of comfort and security, now feel like a cage, trapping you with an approaching, unstoppable force. The emotional arc here is one of deepening fear, a quiet terror that settles deep in your bones as the reality of the Mongol presence becomes undeniable. The siege of Vladimir is swift and brutal. The Mongols, having perfected their siege tactics at Ryazan and other towns, waste no time. Their massive catapults, brought from distant lands or constructed on site, begin to hurl enormous stones and incendiary projectiles against the city walls. You hear the terrifying thud of impact, the splintering of wood, the crumbling of stone. The air fills with the acrid smell of smoke and burning pitch, mingling with the cries of the wounded and the desperate shouts of the defenders. The Mongols, unlike any enemy the Russes have faced, maintain their relentless assault day and night, their drums beating a constant unnerving rhythm that echoes through the frozen air. There is no respite, no moment of peace, only the ceaseless, terrifying pressure of the siege. Close your eyes for a moment and focus on the steady rhythmic beat of your own heart, a small defiant pulse against the overwhelming sounds of destruction. The cold, rough texture of the stone wall against your hand is a fleeting anchor in the chaos. Here's a historical fact. The Mongols used a variety of siege weapons, including trebuchets capable of launching projectiles weighing hundreds of pounds. They also employed incendiary devices, such as pots of naphtha, to set fire to wooden fortifications and buildings within the city. You watch as sections of the wall begin to crumble, as fires erupt within the city, spreading rapidly through the wooden structures. The defenders, exhausted and outnumbered, fight with desperate courage, but their efforts are ultimately futile against the overwhelming force and advanced weaponry of the Mongols. The emotional arc here is one of desperate struggle, a losing battle fought with courage and futility as the city's defences are systematically dismantled. The city's defences finally collapse. The Mongols pour through the breaches, a terrifying wave of warriors sweeping through the streets. The fighting is brutal, house to house, a desperate struggle for survival. Many citizens, including the Grand Prince's family, seek refuge in the magnificent Cathedral of the Assumption, believing the sacred walls will offer protection. You might not realise it, but this act of faith, this desperate hope for sanctuary, will turn into a horrifying tragedy. The Mongols, showing no mercy, pile wood around the cathedral and set it ablaze. The screams of those trapped inside, the crackle of burning timber, and the roar of the flames create a horrifying symphony of destruction. The Cathedral of the Assumption, once a symbol of faith and hope, becomes a fiery tomb, its golden domes melting in the intense heat. Allow your gaze to drift to the swirling smoke, dark and thick, rising into the pale winter sky, carrying with it the ashes of a city. The cold, crisp air fills your lungs, a stark contrast to the suffocating heat and despair. Fringe fact. While the burning of the Cathedral of the Assumption with people inside is widely reported, scholars debate whether this was a deliberate act of desecration or a consequence of the Mongols' general policy of burning conquered cities to instill terror and prevent future resistance. You stand amidst the burning ruins, your heart heavy with grief and despair, witnessing the utter annihilation of a once proud city. The emotional arc here is one of profound loss and the bitter realization of the Mongols' ruthless efficiency. The destruction of Vladimir is not just a military victory, it is a psychological blow, a message that no city, no matter how grand or sacred, is safe from their wrath. After the inferno, an eerie silence descends upon Vladimir. The fires eventually die down, leaving behind only smouldering ruins and the skeletal remains of buildings. You walk through the devastated streets, your boots crunching on charred debris and frozen earth. The once vibrant capital is now a ghost city, its magnificent structures reduced to rubble, its population decimated. The silence is profound, broken only by the mournful cries of crows circling overhead and the occasional creak of a collapsing timber. It is a silence that speaks of utter annihilation, a stark warning to any who would dare to resist the Mongol will. The destruction of Vladimir is complete, a chilling testament to the Mongols' power and their brutal efficiency. Feel the cold, hard ground beneath your feet, a solid, unchanging presence amidst the devastation. The faint scent of wood smoke, though acrid, is also a reminder of the warmth that once filled these homes. Scholars debate the long-term psychological impact of the fall of Vladimir and other major Russian cities. Some argue that it instilled a deep-seated fear of foreign invasion that shaped Russian history for centuries. Others suggest that it also fostered a sense of resilience and a determination to rebuild and resist. You stand amidst the ruins, your spirit heavy with grief, but also with a nascent spark of defiance. The city may be destroyed, but the spirit of Russes endures, a quiet flame flickering in the ashes. The emotional arc here is one of profound loss, but also a subtle hint of future resilience, a testament to the enduring human spirit in the face of unimaginable destruction. The ghost city of Vladimir stands as a monument to a brutal conquest, but also as a silent witness to the indomitable will to survive. From the smouldering ruins of Vladimir, the Mongol army, seemingly unstoppable, turns its gaze northward, towards the wealthy merchant republic of Novgorod. You are now a merchant in this bustling city, a jewel of the north, its prosperity built on trade with the Hanseatic League and its unique political system of a Vesh assembly that elected its princes. The city is a vibrant tapestry of furs, amber, honey and wax, its markets overflowing with goods from across Europe and Asia. Its magnificent St. Sophia Cathedral stands as a testament to its spiritual and economic power. Unlike the fragmented principalities to the south, Novgorod boasts a degree of self-governance and a formidable militia, accustomed to defending its vast territories. Yet even here, the news of the Mongol advance casts a long, chilling shadow. You might not realize it, but Novgorod, despite its wealth and strength, is about to face a threat unlike any it has ever encountered. A force that disregards all traditional notions of warfare and diplomacy. Listen to the distant rhythmic creak of wooden carts laden with goods, a familiar sound that speaks of commerce and stability. Feel the smooth, cold surface of a polished amber bead in your hand, a small, tangible piece of the city's enduring prosperity. Here's a historical fact. Novgorod's unique political structure, with its powerful vechi and elected princes, set it apart from the more autocratic principalities of Rus. This system fostered a strong sense of civic identity and a willingness to defend its independence. You watch as the city's militia, proud and well-equipped, drills in the central square, their movements sharp and disciplined. There is a sense of quiet determination, a belief that Novgorod, with its strong walls and its brave citizens, can withstand any assault. The emotional arc here is one of cautious optimism, a hope that the northern jewel might yet escape the fate of its southern counterparts, a hope that will soon be tested by the relentless march of the winter riders. The Mongol army, having devastated central Rus, now faces a new challenge: the treacherous terrain leading to Novgorod. The path is not one of open plains, but of dense, ancient forests, frozen lakes, and vast, impassable marshes that in summer would swallow an army whole. But it is winter, and the Mongols, ever adaptable, see opportunity where others see insurmountable obstacles. You imagine the army, thousands of riders and their ponies, navigating through the snow-laden forests, their movements surprisingly swift and silent. The frozen rivers and lakes become temporary highways, allowing them to bypass traditional fortifications and move with unprecedented speed. The biting wind, a constant companion, whips through the trees, carrying with it the scent of pine and the faint metallic tang of distant conflict. You might not realize it, but the Mongols' deep understanding of winter travel, their ability to utilize the frozen landscape to their advantage, is a key factor in their relentless advance. Feel the cold, crisp air fill your lungs, carrying the sharp scent of frosted pine needles. The rhythmic crunch of snow underfoot, though distant, is a constant reminder of the relentless march. Fringe fact: the Mongols were known to use frozen rivers and lakes as strategic routes, often moving entire armies across them. This tactic, while risky, allowed them to achieve incredible speeds and surprise their enemies, who typically expected invasions to halt during the winter months. You feel a growing sense of unease as reports filter into Novgorod of Mongol detachments appearing in unexpected places, their movements defying all conventional military logic. The forests, once a protective barrier, now seem to offer no sanctuary, no impediment to the advancing horde. The emotional arc here is one of mounting apprehension, a dawning realization that the natural defences of the land, once thought impregnable, are proving to be no match for the ingenuity and adaptability of the Mongol war machine. The Mongol army presses on, drawing ever closer to Novgorod. The city braces for the inevitable siege, its citizens preparing for a desperate defence. Yet something unexpected happens. Just as the Mongols are within striking distance, having reached a point approximately 100 versts, about 6 miles from the city, they suddenly turn back. The relentless advance halts, and the army, instead of laying siege to the wealthy city, retreats southward, back towards the devastated lands of central Rus. The relief in Novgorod is palpable, a collective sigh of disbelief and gratitude. You might not realize it, But this mysterious turnaround is one of the most debated moments in the Mongol invasion of Rus, a pivotal decision that saved Novgorod from the fate of Ryazan and Vladimir. Listen to the sudden, profound silence that descends upon the city, a quiet that is almost as unsettling as the sounds of war. Feel the warmth of the sun on your face, a welcome reprieve after days of biting cold, a symbol of unexpected deliverance. Here's a historical fact. The exact reasons for the Mongol withdrawal from Novgorod remain a subject of historical debate. Primary sources offer various explanations, including the onset of the spring thaw, known as Rasputitsa, which would turn the frozen ground into impassable mud, logistical difficulties in supplying such a large army in the northern forests, or a strategic decision by Batu Khan to consolidate his gains before pushing further north. You watch from the city walls as the last of the Mongol detachments disappear over the horizon, leaving behind only their tracks in the snow and a lingering sense of bewilderment. The emotional arc here is one of profound relief, mixed with a lingering sense of mystery and a dawning realization of the fragility of fate. Novgorod has been spared, but the question of why remains, a silent echo in the cold winter air. Novgorod, unlike its southern counterparts, emerges from the Mongol invasion largely intact. Its walls remain unbreached, its cathedrals unburned, its population undiminished. The city, though forced to acknowledge Mongol suzerainty and pay tribute, retains its unique political and cultural identity. You might not realize it, but Novgorod's survival is a pivotal moment in Rus's history, preserving a vital link to its pre-Mongol past and providing a beacon of continuity amidst the widespread destruction. Its wealth and its vibrant intellectual life would continue to flourish, contributing significantly to the eventual resurgence of Russian statehood. Feel the steady, rhythmic beat of your own heart, a quiet affirmation of life and continuity amidst the echoes of destruction. The scent of fresh bread from a nearby bakery, a comforting aroma, speaks of resilience and the enduring rhythms of daily life. Scholars debate the long-term impact of Novgorod's unique survival. Some argue that it allowed for the preservation of democratic traditions and a more Western-oriented cultural outlook, which would later influence the development of Moscow. Others contend that its eventual absorption into the Muscovite state demonstrates the ultimate triumph of centralized power. You walk through the bustling markets of Novgorod, the sounds of commerce and conversation filling the air once more. The fear has receded, replaced by a renewed sense of purpose and a quiet determination to rebuild and endure. The emotional arc here is one of hope and resilience, a testament to the enduring spirit of a people who, against all odds, managed to preserve their heritage in the face of overwhelming adversity. The ice road to Novgorod, though never fully traversed by the Mongol horde, remains a powerful symbol of a city that, through a twist of fate, was spared from the full wrath of the winter riders, allowing its legacy to endure and shape the future of Rus. From the unexpected reprieve of Novgorod, we now turn our gaze southward, to a small, seemingly insignificant town named Kozelsk. You're a simple craftsman in this town, perhaps a potter or a weaver, living a quiet life on the banks of the Zhizdra River. The news of the Mongol invasion, of the destruction of Ryazan and Vladimir, has reached your ears, carried by terrified refugees who speak of unspeakable horrors. Fear, cold and sharp, has settled over Kozelsk, but unlike the larger cities, there is no grand prince to flee, no vast army to gather. There is only your community, your neighbours, and a fierce, unyielding determination to protect your homes. You might not realise it, but this small town with its modest fortifications and its handful of defenders is about to etch its name into the annals of history, becoming a symbol of defiant courage against an overwhelming tide. Listen to the gentle murmur of the Zhizdra River, now partially frozen, a constant, soothing sound that belies the tension in the air. Feel the rough, familiar texture of your tools in your calloused hands, a small comfort in a world turned upside down. Here's a historical fact. Kozelsk was a relatively minor town in the Chernigov Principality, not a major strategic centre. Its resistance was unexpected and disproportionate to its size, making its story all the more remarkable. You watch as the townspeople, men and women, young and old, work tirelessly to reinforce the wooden palisades, to sharpen their meagre weapons to prepare for the inevitable. Their faces are grim, but their eyes hold a spark of defiance, a refusal to surrender without a fight. The emotional arc here is one of quiet determination, a sense of collective resolve born from desperation, as a small community prepares to face the might of an empire. Then the Mongols arrive. Not a small raiding party, but the main army of Batu Khan himself, fresh from the destruction of Vladimir, numbering in the tens of thousands. You see them first as a dark, menacing cloud on the horizon, growing larger with every passing moment. The ground begins to tremble, a low, guttural rumble that vibrates through the very earth beneath your feet. The air fills with the chilling, high-pitched cries of the Mongol warriors, a sound that strikes fear into the bravest of hearts. You might not realize it, but the presence of Batu Khan, the grandson of Genghis Khan, signifies the immense importance the Mongols placed on crushing any resistance, no matter how small. They expected a swift victory, another easy conquest to add to their growing list of fallen cities. Focus on the steady rhythmic beat of your own heart, a frantic drum against the overwhelming sounds of the approaching horde, the scent of wood smoke from your own hearth. Usually comforting, now seems fragile, threatened by the vast alien presence. Fringe fact: the Mongols, accustomed to rapid conquests, were often infuriated by prolonged resistance from seemingly insignificant towns. Such defiance was seen as an insult to their power and a challenge to their authority, often leading to even more brutal reprisals. You feel a cold knot of fear tighten in your stomach as you witness the sheer scale of the invading force. The town, once a haven of peace, now feels like a tiny, vulnerable island surrounded by an ocean of steel and fury. The emotional arc here is one of profound dread, a dawning realization of the impossible odds, yet a stubborn refusal to yield. The siege of Kozelsk begins, and is unlike any other. The Mongols, confident in their overwhelming numbers and superior siege engines, launch a series of assaults expecting the town to fall within days. But Kozelsk holds. For 7 long, brutal weeks the small town resists. You find yourself on the palisades fighting alongside your neighbours, repelling wave after wave of Mongol attacks. The air is thick with the whistle of arrows, the thud of stones, and the desperate cries of battle. The wooden walls splinter, the earthworks crumble, but the defenders, fueled by a desperate courage, refuse to break. You might not realise it, but this prolonged resistance, this stubborn refusal to surrender, infuriates Batu Khan, earning Kozelsk the grim moniker, the city of the angry wolf. Close your eyes for a moment, and focus on the steady, rhythmic clang of a blacksmith's hammer, a sound of resilience and enduring craftsmanship amidst the chaos. The cold, crisp air fills your lungs, a stark contrast to the suffocating smoke and fear. Here's a historical fact. The prolonged resistance of Kozelsk forced Batu Khan to commit significant resources and time, delaying his overall campaign. This unexpected delay was a testament to the town's fierce defence and the heavy casualties inflicted upon the Mongol army. You fight until your arms ache, until your vision blurs, until every muscle screams in protest. The taste of blood and fear is constant, but so is the unwavering resolve of your comrades. The emotional arc here is one of desperate courage, a testament to the human spirit's capacity for defiance in the face of unimaginable odds, a refusal to let fear dictate surrender. But even the fiercest defiance has its limits. After 7 weeks of relentless assault, with heavy losses on both sides, the Mongols finally breach the defences, the town is overrun, and the fighting becomes a brutal house-to-house slaughter. The Mongols, enraged by the prolonged resistance and the casualties they suffered, show no mercy. You witness scenes of unspeakable horror, the destruction of everything you hold dear. The town, once a symbol of defiance, is reduced to ashes, its population massacred. You might not realise it, but the fate of Kozelsk serves as a chilling example of the Mongols' policy. Swift and total destruction for those who resist, relative leniency for those who surrender immediately. Allow your gaze to drift to the swirling ashes, dark and thick, rising into the pale winter sky, carrying with it the remnants of a destroyed community. The cold, crisp air fills your lungs, a stark contrast to the suffocating heat and despair. Fringe fact. Legend has it that the young Prince Vasily of Kozelsk, a mere boy, was among the last defenders and was drowned in the blood of his own people. While the historical accuracy of this detail is debated, it underscores the brutality of the Mongol reprisal. You stand amidst the smouldering ruins, your heart heavy with grief and despair, witnessing the utter annihilation of your home. The emotional arc here is one of profound loss and of the bitter taste of defeat, a realization that even the most courageous resistance can come at an unbearable price. The city of the Angry Wolf, though destroyed, leaves behind a legacy of defiance, a testament to the indomitable spirit of a small town that dared to stand against an empire. Let us step inside the walls of Kozelsk during those 7 brutal weeks to understand what daily life looked like for the defenders. You are Anya, a woman in her 30s, wife of a blacksmith who is now fighting on the walls. Your days, once filled with the simple rhythms of domestic life, cooking, weaving, caring for your 2 young children, have transformed into a relentless struggle for survival. The first week of the siege was the worst for morale. The arrival of Batu Khan's massive army was terrifying, the sheer scale of it overwhelming. You remember standing on the walls with the other townsfolk watching the Mongol camp spread across the horizon like a dark stain. The constant drumbeats, the strange foreign shouts, the sight of siege engines being assembled, it all felt like a nightmare from which there was no waking. You held your children close, trying to shield them from the sight, but they felt your fear, your trembling hands, your whispered prayers. Focus on the familiar weight of your youngest child in your arms, the warmth of their small body against yours, a reminder of what you're fighting to protect. Listen to the soft, rhythmic sound of your own heartbeat, steady and strong despite the fear. By the second week, a strange routine had emerged. The Mongol assaults came in waves, typically at dawn and dusk, with sporadic bombardment throughout the day. In the brief periods between attacks, life in the town took on a surreal quality. You would rush to the well to draw water, always aware that a stone from a catapult could strike at any moment. You would gather firewood from demolished buildings, using every scrap to keep your family warm. Food was already being rationed. The town's stores, adequate for a normal winter, were being depleted rapidly by the prolonged siege. Here's a fringe fact. Medieval siege warfare was as much a test of logistics and endurance as it was of military might. Defenders faced the constant threats of starvation, disease from poor sanitation, and psychological exhaustion. The winter cold added another layer of difficulty. Fires needed for warmth consumed fuel that might otherwise be used for cooking or boiling water, and the wounded suffered terribly in the frigid conditions. Backrack, Bernadette warfare in medieval Europe, C400C 1-3. Routledge, 2017. You have taken on new roles that would have been unthinkable in peacetime. You help carry stones and timbers to reinforce damaged sections of the wall. You assist the town's healer, a grim-faced old woman named Baba Martha, in tending to the wounded. The injuries are horrific. Arrow wounds that fester despite her herbal poultices, crushed limbs from falling stones, burns from the Greek fire the Mongols occasionally hurl over the walls. You hold down screaming men while Martha probes for arrowheads, your own stomach churning but your hand steady. This is not the life you chose, but it is the life that has been thrust upon you. Your own children, 7-year-old Ivan and 4-year-old Katya, have changed as well. Ivan, once a boisterous, playful boy, has become quiet and watchful. He helps without being asked, carrying water, comforting his younger sister, never complaining about the shrinking portions of food. Katya clings to you constantly, her eyes wide and fearful at every loud noise. You try to maintain some semblance of normalcy for them, telling them stories at night, singing the old lullabies your own mother sang to you. But the stories now compete with the sounds of battle, and the lullabies are interrupted by the crash of stones against the walls. Feel the soft texture of Katya's hair as you braid it, a simple maternal act that grounds you in the midst of chaos. Listen to Ivan's attempts to be brave, his small voice reciting a prayer he learned from the priest, a touching display of childhood faith. One evening, during a rare quiet moment, Ivan asks you, "Mama, why do the bad men want to hurt us?" You struggle to find an answer that a child could understand. How do you explain conquest, empire, the ambitions of distant Khans? You settle for, sometimes people do bad things because they are angry or scared, but we are strong and we will protect each other. It is a hollow comfort, and you see in his eyes that he knows it, but he nods and hugs you tightly. The town's priest, Father Kirill, has become a central figure in maintaining morale. He leads prayers every evening in the small wooden church, his voice strong and unwavering despite the terror all around. He speaks of faith, of martyrdom, of the righteousness of defending one's home. You might not realize it, but this spiritual dimension was crucial in sustaining the defenders of Kozelsk. They were fighting not just for survival, but for something they believed to be sacred, their faith and their community. Here's a historical fact. The Orthodox Church played a vital role in medieval Russian society, providing not only spiritual guidance but also social cohesion. During sieges, churches often served as refugees, and priests acted as counselors and morale boosters. The promise of heavenly reward for those who died defending the faith was a powerful motivator. Franklin Simon and Jonathan Shepard. The emergence of Rus 750 to 1200, Longman, 1996. As the siege enters its fifth week, the situation inside Kozelsk has become dire. Food is scarce. You are rationing bread made from the last of the flour mixed with sawdust to make it stretch further. Water from the well is running low, and there are whispers that the Mongols have found a way to divert the underground springs. The wounded outnumber the able-bodied, and Baba Marfa's supplies of healing herbs are exhausted. Disease is beginning to spread, a fever that leaves its victims weak and delirious. Yet in the midst of this desperation, you witness acts of extraordinary courage and solidarity. You see old men too frail to fight insisting on carrying stones to the walls. You see young women taking up bows and standing alongside the men. You see neighbours sharing their last scraps of food with those who have none. The town, facing annihilation, has become a true community, bound together by shared suffering and mutual defiance. One night your husband Dmitri returns from the walls, his face blackened with soot and blood. He tells you of a sortie, a desperate night raid launched by the town's remaining warriors against the Mongol siege engines. They managed to burn 2 catapults before being driven back, losing half their number in the process. Dmitri himself has a deep gash on his arm, which you bind with strips torn from your own dress. He is exhausted, but there is a fierce pride in his eyes. "We made them bleed," he says simply. Feel the rough, calloused hand of your husband in yours. A connection that transcends words, a shared understanding of the impossible situation you face together. The flickering candlelight casts gentle shadows on the walls of your small home, a fragile sanctuary against the darkness outside. The emotional arc here is one of profound humanity in the face of inhumanity. These are not historical abstractions, but real people, parents, children, neighbours, facing an impossible situation with courage, love, and an unyielding determination to protect what they hold dear. Their story, though it ends in tragedy, is a testament to the resilience of the human spirit. From the ashes of conquered cities and the blood-soaked fields, a new, chilling silence descends upon the lands of Rus. The thunder of Mongol hooves has faded, the cries of battle have died down, replaced by an eerie stillness that speaks not of peace, but of submission. You are now a survivor, living in a small rebuilt village, your life irrevocably altered. The familiar rhythms of daily life have returned, but they are tinged with a new, oppressive weight. The fields are tilled, the crops are sown, but the harvest is no longer entirely your own. The forests are still vast, the rivers still flow, but the land itself feels different, as if it too has been conquered. You might not realize it, but the Mongol invasion, though seemingly over, has ushered in a new era, one of foreign domination, and a profound reordering of society, the establishment of the Golden Horde. Listen to the gentle rustle of leaves in the wind, a soft, whispering sound that carries the weight of unspoken fears and quiet resilience. Feel the cool, damp earth beneath your bare feet, a constant grounding presence in a world that has been turned upside down. Here's a historical fact. After their initial devastating campaigns, the Mongols did not directly administer most of the Rus's principalities. Instead, they established a system of vassalage, where Rus's princes were allowed to retain their thrones but were required to pay heavy tribute and acknowledge the suzerainty of the Mongol Khan. This new political entity became known as the Golden Horde, centered on the lower Volga River. You watch as a lone rider, a Mongol tax collector, approaches your village. His presence, though solitary, carries the weight of an entire empire. The villagers, once boisterous and lively, fall silent, their eyes downcast, their movements subdued. The emotional arc here is one of resignation, a quiet acceptance of a new, harsh reality, but also a simmering undercurrent of resentment and a deep-seated desire for eventual freedom. The most immediate and tangible impact of the Golden Horde is the system of tribute. You work harder than ever before, tilling the soil, tending your livestock, crafting your wares, knowing that a significant portion of your labour will not benefit your family or your community, but will instead be sent eastward to the distant Khan. The Mongol tax collectors, known as Baskaks, are a constant, unwelcome presence, their visits marked by fear and anxiety. They demand not only silver and furs, but also men for the Mongol army, a chilling reminder of your subjugation. You might not realise it, but this system of tribute, while economically draining, also had a profound impact on the political development of Rus', forcing princes to compete for the Khan's favour and to become efficient tax collectors themselves. Focus on the rhythmic sound of your own breathing, a steady internal pulse against the external pressures of a conquered land. The scent of freshly cut hay, though a sign of hard labour, also carries the promise of sustenance and survival. Fringe fact: the Mongols conducted detailed censuses of the Rus' population to accurately assess their tax base. These censuses were meticulously carried out, often involving the counting of every household and every able-bodied man, a level of administrative detail unprecedented in Rus' at the time. You feel the weight of the tribute, not just in the goods you surrender, but in the constant anxiety that permeates your life. The emotional arc here is one of quiet oppression, a sense of being trapped within a system that demands constant sacrifice, yet also a subtle strengthening of community bonds as people learn to rely on each other for support and survival. The Mongol Yoke, as it came to be known, was not merely an economic burden, it cast a long shadow over every aspect of Rus' life. The princes, once fiercely independent, now travelled to the Horde to receive their yarlik, or patent of office, from the Khan, a humiliating ritual that underscored their subservience. Disputes between princes were often settled by the Khan, further centralising power in the hands of the conquerors. You might not realise it, but this period of Mongol domination, lasting for over 2 centuries, profoundly shaped the future trajectory of Russia, influencing its political culture, its military organisation, and even its diplomatic relations with both East and West. Allow your gaze to drift to the distant horizon, where the vast, empty plains meet the pale winter sky, a symbol of both the boundless reach of the Horde and the enduring spirit of the land. The faint scent of wood smoke from your village, though small, is a defiant assertion of continued life. Here's a historical fact. The Mongols, while imposing their political and economic will, generally practiced religious tolerance. As long as the tribute was paid and loyalty maintained, the Orthodox Church was largely left undisturbed, and even granted tax exemptions. This policy helped to maintain a degree of stability, and prevented widespread religious rebellion. You hear the stories of princes travelling to the Horde, some returning with renewed authority, others never returning at all. The emotional arc here is one of uncertainty and adaptation, a complex dance between submission and subtle resistance, as the Rus' learn to navigate the treacherous waters of Mongol rule. The long shadow of the Horde is not just a period of darkness, it is a crucible in which a new Rus' is slowly, painfully forged. Despite the oppression, life in Rus' continues, and slowly, subtly, seeds of resurgence begin to sprout. The need to deal with the Mongols, to navigate their demands and exploit their internal divisions, inadvertently fosters a greater sense of unity among the Rus' princes. The city of Moscow, once a minor principality, begins to rise in prominence, its princes proving particularly adept at managing their relationship with the Horde, often acting as intermediaries and tax collectors for the Mongols. You might not realise it, but this period of apparent subjugation is also a time of quiet consolidation, of learning, and of strategic manoeuvring that will eventually lead to the overthrow of the Mongol yoke. Feel the warmth of the fire on your face, a small comforting glow that symbolises the enduring flame of hope and resilience. The scent of baking bread, rich and earthy, is a reminder of the simple, persistent acts of creation that continue even in the darkest of times. Scholars debate the extent to which the Mongol yoke was a purely destructive force, or if it inadvertently contributed to the centralization of power in Moscow and the eventual formation of the Russian state. Some argue that the Mongols, by breaking down the old feudal structures, cleared the way for a new, more autocratic form of rule. Others emphasize the devastating cultural and economic impact, arguing that Rusi's was set back centuries. You watch your children play, their laughter echoing in the small warm cottage. Their world is different from yours, shaped by the long shadow of the Horde, but in their eyes you see a future, a promise of renewal. The emotional arc here is one of subtle hope, a quiet determination to endure and to build, even under the weight of foreign domination. The Golden Horde may have conquered Rus, but it could not extinguish the spirit of its people, the spirit that would one day rise again. Life under the Golden Horde was a complex tapestry of oppression and adaptation. You are now a peasant in a small Russia's village, years after the initial devastation. The fear of the Mongol raids has receded somewhat, replaced by the grinding reality of daily existence under foreign rule. The seasons still turn, the crops still grow, but every aspect of your life is now subtly, yet profoundly, influenced by the distant Khan. You wake before dawn, the air in your small smoky hut thick with the scent of damp earth and wood smoke. The familiar sounds of your village, the crow of a rooster, the lowing of cattle, the distant bark of a dog, are comforting in their routine, a fragile shield against the ever-present uncertainty. You might not realize it, but this new normal, this delicate balance between survival and submission, is a testament to the incredible resilience of the Rusi's people, their capacity to adapt and endure even the most profound changes. Listen to the rhythmic creak of the wooden well sweep as a neighbour draws water, a steady, reassuring sound that speaks of enduring necessity. Feel the rough, warm texture of your homespun tunic, a simple garment that represents both your labour and your connection to the land. Here's a historical fact. While the Mongols imposed a heavy tribute and political subservience, they largely allowed the Ruses to maintain their traditional social structures, religious practices, and local customs. This pragmatic approach helped to prevent widespread rebellion and ensured a steady flow of revenue to the Horde. You watch your children play in the village square, their laughter bright and carefree, a stark contrast to the grim determination etched on the faces of the adults. They are growing up in a world shaped by the Mongol yoke, a world where the word Khan carries a weight of both fear and distant authority. The emotional arc here is one of quiet endurance, a sense of living day to day, finding small joys and moments of peace amidst the overarching reality of foreign domination. The Mongol presence, while brutal, was not entirely without cultural exchange. Over the centuries, elements of Mongol culture, administration, and even language began to seep into Russia's society. You might hear a new word enter the local dialect, a term for a tax or a military rank, borrowed from the Turkic languages of the steppe. You might see a new style of clothing or a different way of organising a market, subtle influences that speak of the long interaction between two vastly different cultures. Yet these exchanges are often overshadowed by the lingering scars of the invasion. The memory of the destruction, the loss of life, and the imposition of foreign rule remains deeply ingrained in the collective consciousness, a wound that heals slowly, if at all. Allow your gaze to drift to the intricate patterns of frost on your window pane, delicate and beautiful, yet a stark reminder of the harsh winter landscape. The faint scent of distant cooking fires, though comforting, also carries a hint of the unfamiliar, a subtle shift in the culinary landscape. Fringe fact: many Russian words related to finance, administration, and military organization, such as kazna, treasury, tamozhnia, customs, and Yamskaya Gomba, postal service, have Turkic-Mongol origins, demonstrating the lasting, linguistic impact of the Golden Horde. You observe a Mongol Baskak, tax collector, riding through your village. His exotic attire and stern demeanour are a stark contrast to the familiar faces of your neighbours. He represents the distant power, the unseen hand that guides your fate. The emotional arc here is one of subtle cultural blending, but also a persistent sense of alienation, a constant awareness of the divide between conqueror and conquered. The scars of the invasion are not just physical, They are etched into the very fabric of society, shaping identities and destinies. Amidst the political upheaval and social restructuring, the Orthodox Church emerges as a powerful force for continuity and national identity. You find solace in the familiar rituals of the church, the chanting of the priests, the flickering of candles, the scent of incense. The church, unlike the fragmented principalities, offers a sense of unity, a spiritual refuge in a world turned upside down. The Mongols, in their pragmatic approach to governance, largely left the church undisturbed, even granting it tax exemptions and privileges. You might not realise it, but this policy, intended to maintain stability, inadvertently allowed the church to become a central institution for preserving Russ's culture and fostering a sense of collective identity during the long centuries of Mongol rule. Listen to the deep, resonant tones of the church bells, a sound that has echoed through generations, a constant presence in a changing world. Feel the smooth, cool wood of a prayer bead in your hand, a tangible connection to a spiritual tradition that offers comfort and hope. Here's a historical fact. The Metropolitan of Kiev and all Rus was allowed to maintain his ecclesiastical authority and jurisdiction over the entire Russ's territory, even under Mongol rule. This spiritual unity provided a crucial counterbalance to the political fragmentation and foreign domination. You watch as people gather for divine liturgy, their faces solemn and hopeful, finding strength in their shared faith. The church, with its ancient traditions and its unwavering message, becomes a silent symbol of resistance, a repository of national memory, and a promise of future liberation. The emotional arc here is one of spiritual resilience, a deep-seated belief in something larger than temporal power, a source of enduring strength in the face of adversity. While outright rebellion was rare and brutally suppressed, forms of subtle resistance and adaptation began to emerge. Princes learned to navigate the complex politics of the Horde, playing rivals against each other and slowly consolidating their own power. The people too found ways to endure, to preserve their traditions, and to subtly undermine the foreign rule. You might hear hushed conversations in the marketplace, stories of defiance, of small victories against the Baskaks. You might witness a subtle act of non-compliance, a quiet refusal to fully embrace the new order. You might not realise it, but these small acts of defiance, these quiet assertions of identity, are the seeds of future liberation, the first stirrings of a long and arduous struggle for independence. Feel the subtle warmth of a hidden ember beneath the ashes of your hearth, a small, persistent glow that promises a return to full flame. The scent of damp earth after a light rain, fresh and clean, speaks of renewal and the enduring cycles of nature. Scholars debate the nature and extent of Russ's resistance during the early period of Mongol rule. Some argue that it was largely passive and adaptive, focused on survival. Others point to instances of local uprisings and the gradual consolidation of power by certain Russ's princes as early forms of active resistance. You watch as a group of young men gather in the evening, their voices low, their eyes alight with a shared purpose. They are learning, adapting, waiting for the opportune moment. The emotional arc here is one of simmering hope, a quiet determination to reclaim what was lost, a belief that even the longest night must eventually give way to dawn. Life under the yoke is not merely about survival. It is about the slow, deliberate cultivation of the seeds of freedom, a testament to the enduring spirit of Russ. Let us focus on a specific, recurring event that defined life under the Golden Horde: the visit of the Baskak, the Mongol tax collector. It is autumn, the harvest has just been gathered, and you are a peasant farmer in a small village in the Vladimir region, about 50 years after the initial invasion. The Mongol yoke is now an established fact of life, a reality that your children have never known anything different from. The news arrives 3 days before the Baskak himself. He is coming to assess the harvest and collect the tribute. The village elder, a stooped, weathered man named Pyotr, calls a meeting in the central square. His face is grim, his voice heavy with the weight of unpleasant duty. "We must prepare," he says. "Hide nothing. They have spies, and the punishment for deception is severe." You remember the stories from a neighbouring village where the Baskak discovered hidden grain. The entire village was decimated. Its able-bodied men taken as slaves, its homes burned. Feel the cool evening air on your skin, carrying the scent of ripe grain and damp earth. Listen to the worried murmurs of your neighbours, a collective anxiety that binds you together in shared apprehension. The preparation is a sombre affair. You and your neighbours gather the harvest in the central square, laying out sacks of grain, bundles of flax, wheels of cheese, and whatever else the village has produced. It represents months of back-breaking labour, and you know that a significant portion, perhaps a third, perhaps more, will be taken. Your wife, Elena, weeps quietly as she carries out your family's contribution. This grain was meant to feed your children through the winter, and now you will have to make do with less. Here's a historical fact. The Mongol tribute system was comprehensive and meticulously enforced. It included not only agricultural products, but also furs, handicrafts, and most importantly silver. The Mongols conducted regular censuses to ensure accurate tax assessment, and evasion was punished with brutal efficiency. The collection process was often delegated to Russ's princes, who became complicit in the exploitation of their own people, Ostrowski, Donald Muscovy, and the Mongols. Cross-cultural influences on the steppe frontier, 1304 to 1589. Cambridge University Press, 1998. When the Baskak arrives, it is with a small retinue of Mongol warriors and a Russi's scribe, a collaborator who records the transactions in both Mongol script and Cyrillic. The Baskak himself is a middle-aged man with a weathered face and cold, calculating eyes. He dismounts and surveys the gathered tribute without expression. Through the scribe he asks questions. How many households? How many able-bodied men? Were there any births or deaths since the last census? Elder Pyotr answers truthfully, his voice carefully neutral, showing neither defiance nor obsequiousness. The inspection is thorough and humiliating. The Baskak opens sacks, examines grain for quality, weighs cheese, and scrutinises every item. He is not cruel, not particularly sadistic, but his indifference is perhaps worse. You and your neighbours are not people to him. You are resources to be extracted, numbers in a ledger. When he finds a basket of eggs hidden behind a cart, a desperate attempt by one family to keep something back for their sick child, the punishment is swift. The family's entire contribution is confiscated, double the usual amount, and the father receives 10 lashes in the village square as a warning to others. What makes the Baskak's visits particularly bitter is the presence of the Russ's scribe, and occasionally representatives from your own prince. They are the go-betweens, the translators, the enforcers. You might not realise it, but this system of using local intermediaries was a deliberate Mongol strategy. It divided the population, creating a class of people whose interests were aligned with the occupiers, and it transferred some of the resentment away from the distant Khan and onto more proximate figures. Listen to the scratch of the scribe's pen on parchment, a sound that represents both record-keeping and betrayal. Feel the rough wooden bench beneath you as you sit, watching the process, your jaw clenched in silent frustration. The Russ's scribe is a young man from a minor noble family, educated, literate, and perpetually anxious. You know his name, Vasily, and you remember when he was a boy, playing in these very streets. Now he serves the Mongols, and while he does not meet your eyes, you can see the shame in the set of his shoulders. He's trapped, you understand, between survival and conscience. Refusing to serve would mean death or exile, but serving makes him complicit in the oppression of his own people. Here's a fringe fact. The Mongol administrative system relied heavily on local expertise and labour. They employed Russ's scribes, merchants, and even low-ranking nobles to manage the day-to-day operations of tribute collection and governance. This created a complex web of collaboration and resistance, where individuals often had to make difficult choices between personal survival and collective solidarity. Halperin, Charles J. Russia and the Golden Horde, The Mongol Impact on Medieval Russian History, Indiana University Press, 1985. After the Baskak leaves, taking with him laden carts of tribute, the village is left in a state of exhausted relief and simmering anger. Elder Pyotr sits on the steps of the village church, his head in his hands. You approach him and he looks up, his eyes red-rimmed. "How long?" you ask, not needing to specify what you mean. He shakes his head slowly. "I don't know, my son, but we endure. It is all we can do." The emotional arc here is one of grinding oppression, a daily humiliation that wears down the spirit. But beneath that exhaustion, there is also a stubborn refusal to be broken, a quiet determination to survive and perhaps someday to resist. Shift your perspective once more, this time to that of a travelling merchant named Ilya. You ply the trade routes between Novgorod and the Golden Horde's capital at Sarai, carrying furs, amber and honey southward, and returning with silk, spices and silver. Your life is one of constant motion, navigating not just the physical challenges of the vast distances and harsh climate, but also the complex political landscape of occupied Rus. You stand on the banks of the Volga River, watching as your goods are loaded onto a flat-bottomed boat. The river, once solely a lifeline for Rus's commerce, is now also a highway for Mongol power. You see their patrol boats, swift and efficient, ensuring that trade flows smoothly and that taxes are collected. The Mongol control, you must admit grudgingly, has brought a certain stability to the trade routes. Banditry, once a constant threat, has been largely eliminated. The Mongols enforce their laws with brutal efficiency, and while the taxes are high, the predictability is valuable. Feel the gentle rocking of the boat as it sets off down a river, a rhythmic motion that has lulled countless travellers over the centuries. Listen to the soft lap of water against the wooden hull, a timeless sound that connects you to the river's long history. Here's a historical fact. The Mongol Empire facilitated trade across Eurasia through a system known as the Yam, a network of postal stations and trade routes protected by Mongol law. Merchants who carried a paisa, a tablet of authority issued by the Khan, were granted safe passage and could requisition supplies and horses. This system, known as the Pax Mongolica, led to an unprecedented period of transcontinental trade and cultural exchange. Weatherford, Jack and Genghis Khan and the Making of the Modern World, Crown Publishers, 2004. Yet your travels also expose you to the full spectrum of Mongol rule. You see prosperous cities like Sarai, with their bustling markets and cosmopolitan populations, where Rus, Mongols, Volga Bulgars, and even Italian merchants mingle. You also see the ruins of cities that resisted, left as stark reminders of the price of defiance. You hear stories in taverns and caravanserais, whispered tales of Rus's princes who defied the Khan and paid with their lives, of villages that hid their grain and were razed to the ground. In a quiet monastery near Vladimir, you encounter a very different form of resistance. You have delivered a consignment of expensive parchment and inks, and the abbot, a learned man named Father Sergius, invites you to stay the night. After Vespers, he takes you to the scriptorium, where monks labour by candlelight, their pens scratching across vellum. "We are chroniclers," Father Sergius explains, his voice soft but intense. "We record what has happened, what is happening, so that future generations will know. The Mongols may rule our bodies, but they cannot rule our memories." You watch as a young monk carefully transcribes an account of the Battle of Kalka River. His face sombre as he writes of the defeat and the arrogance of the Rus's princes who ignored the warnings. Feel the cool, smooth surface of the parchment under your fingertips, and the precious material that carries the weight of history. Smell the distinct, slightly acrid scent of iron gall ink, a smell that has accompanied the recording of human knowledge for centuries. Here's a fringe fact. The Rus chronicles, particularly the Novgorod and Laurentian chronicles, provide invaluable primary source accounts of the Mongol invasion and the subsequent period of the Golden Horde. These monastic scribes, working in relative safety due to the Mongols' policy of religious tolerance, preserved not just facts, but also the emotional and spiritual response of the Rus's people to the conquest. Franklin Simon and Jonathan Shepard, The Emergence of Rus 750-1200, Longman, 1996. Father Sergius shows you another text, a collection of saints' lives and tales of martyrdom. "We must remember the heroes," he says, "men like Evpati Kolovrat of Ryazan, who fought against impossible odds. These stories give us hope, remind us that resistance, even in defeat, is a form of victory." The emotional arc here is one of cultural resilience. Despite political subjugation, the intellectual and spiritual life of Roses continues, preserved by these dedicated monks who understand that memory itself is a form of resistance. Centuries have passed since the initial Mongol invasion, and the landscape of Rus has subtly yet profoundly shifted. You are now a resident of Moscow, a city that, in the wake of the Mongol devastation, has risen from relative obscurity to become a powerful and influential principality. The wooden palisades have given way to stone walls, the small churches to grand cathedrals, and the muddy tracks to bustling trade routes. The air is still crisp with the Russian winter, but it carries a new scent. The scent of ambition, of growing power, and of a nascent national identity. You might not realise it, but Moscow's rise is not merely a stroke of luck, it is the culmination of centuries of careful diplomacy, strategic alliances, and a pragmatic approach to dealing with the Golden Horde. Listen to the rhythmic clang of hammers from the Kremlin's construction sites, a sound that speaks of enduring strength and a future being forged in stone. Feel the cold, smooth surface of a newly minted coin in your hand, a tangible symbol of Moscow's growing economic might. Here's a historical fact. Moscow's princes, particularly Ivan I and Kalita, Ivan Moneybag, were exceptionally skilled at navigating the complex politics of the Golden Horde. They often acted as loyal tax collectors for the Mongols, which earned them the Khan's favour, allowing them to consolidate their own power and acquire other Rus' lands. You watch as a procession of boyars, richly dressed and accompanied by armed guards, makes its way through the snow-covered streets. Their faces are stern, their demeanour confident, reflecting the growing authority of their prince. The emotional arc here is one of cautious optimism, a sense that a new chapter is beginning, one where the Rus' might finally claim their destiny. Moscow's ascendancy was built on more than just Mongol favour. Its strategic location, at the crossroads of major river routes, facilitated trade and attracted settlers from other, less secure principalities. Its princes also actively pursued a policy of land acquisition, often buying up territories from weaker neighbours or inheriting them through strategic marriages. You might not realise it, but this slow, deliberate accumulation of power, often under the guise of Mongol authority, was laying the groundwork for a unified Rus' state, a state strong enough to eventually challenge the Horde itself. The memory of the Mongol yoke, though distant, served as a powerful motivator, a constant reminder of the need for unity and strength. Feel the warmth of a crackling fire in a bustling tavern, the scent of spiced mead and roasted meats filling the air, a symbol of Moscow's growing prosperity and cultural vibrancy. The distant sound of church bells, though familiar, now rings with a note of renewed confidence. Fringe fact: Moscow's princes also benefited from the support of the Orthodox Church, which often relocated its metropolitan head bishop to Moscow, further enhancing the city's prestige and spiritual authority. This alliance between secular and ecclesiastical power was crucial in unifying the Rus' lands. You see merchants from distant lands haggling into the marketplace, their goods a testament to Moscow's growing influence. The city is a magnet, drawing in talent, wealth, and ambition, slowly but surely becoming the heart of a resurgent Rus. The emotional arc here is one of quiet determination, a sense of purpose that permeates the very air of Moscow, a city destined for greatness. By the late 14th century, the Golden Horde, once a monolithic power, begins to show signs of internal weakness and fragmentation. Dynastic struggles, internal conflicts, and the rise of ambitious regional Khans weaken its grip on the Rus' lands. This internal strife provides Moscow with the opportunity it has long awaited. In 1380, under the leadership of Grand Prince Dmitry Donskoy, a united Rus' army, primarily composed of Muscovite forces and their allies, confronts a large Mongol army led by Mamai, a powerful warlord of the Horde, at the Battle of Kulikovo Field. You are a warrior in Dmitry's army standing on the vast snow-dusted plain, the air thick with anticipation and fear. The clash of steel, the roar of thousands of men, the thunder of hooves. It is a battle for the soul of Rus. You might not realise it, but this battle, though not the final end of the Mongol yoke, is a pivotal moment, a powerful symbol of Rus' growing strength and a glimmer of hope for future liberation. Listen to the rhythmic thud of your own heart, a drumbeat of courage and defiance against the overwhelming sounds of battle. Feel the cold, smooth wood of your spear shaft, a familiar weight that grounds you in the chaos. Here's a historical fact. The Battle of Kulikovo was a massive engagement, involving tens of thousands of soldiers on both sides. While the exact numbers are debated, it was a significant victory for the Rus' forces, demonstrating their ability to defeat a large Mongol army in a pictured battle. You fight with the ferocity born of centuries of oppression, your comrades beside you, a unified force against the foreign oppressor. The emotional arc here is one of desperate courage, a collective surge of defiance that momentarily overcomes fear. a powerful assertion of a nascent national identity. The red snow of Kulikovo is not a symbol of defeat, but of a hard-won victory, a promise of a future free from the Mongol yoke. Despite the victory at Kulikovo, the Mongol yoke was not immediately broken. The Horde launched punitive expeditions, and tribute payments resumed. However, the balance of power had irrevocably shifted. Moscow continued to grow in strength, its princes increasingly assertive while the Golden Horde continued its slow decline. Finally, in 1480, nearly a century after Kulikovo, the decisive moment arrives. Grand Prince Ivan III of the Moscow, known as Ivan the Great, refuses to pay tribute to the Great Horde, a successor state to the Golden Horde, led by Khan Akhmet. The two armies meet on opposite banks of the Ugra River, a silent, tense standoff that lasts for weeks. You are a soldier in Ivan's army, shivering in the late autumn cold watching the Mongol forces across the river. The air is thick with anticipation, but no battle is fought. You might not realise it, but this great stand on the Ugra River is the symbolic end of the Mongol yoke, a bloodless victory that marks the true liberation of Rus. Allow your gaze to drift to the swirling mist rising from the Ugra River, a veil between two worlds, two eras. The cold, crisp air fills your lungs, a stark contrast to the suffocating weight of centuries of foreign rule. Fringe fact: the Great Stand on the Ugra River is often described as a psychological victory. The Mongols, facing a unified and well-prepared Rus's army, and perhaps wary of the approaching winter and their own internal divisions, eventually retreated without engaging in battle. This retreat was seen as a clear sign of their diminished power. You stand firm, your resolve unwavering, a silent testament to the centuries of endurance and the growing strength of Moscow. The emotional arc here is one of quiet triumph, a profound sense of liberation that washes over you, not with a roar of battle, but with the gentle whisper of a retreating enemy. The long winter of Mongol domination is finally over, and a new dawn is breaking over the lands of Rus. With the end of the Mongol yoke, a new era begins for Rus. Moscow, now the undisputed centre of power, embarks on a period of rapid expansion and consolidation, eventually forming the centralised Russian state. The memory of the Mongol invasion, though painful, serves as a powerful unifying force, shaping the national identity and fostering a deep-seated desire for a strong, independent state. You might not realise it, but the centuries of adaptation and resistance under the Golden Horde, though brutal, inadvertently forged a resilient and unified people, ready to build a new future. The brutal winters of conquest, once a tool of the invaders, ultimately became a backdrop against which the enduring spirit of Rus shone brightest. Feel the warmth of the rising sun on your face, a golden glow that promises a new day, a new beginning for a liberated land. The scent of fresh pine and damp earth, though familiar, now carries a note of hope, a promise of growth and renewal. Scholars debate the precise legacy of the Mongol yoke on Russian development. Some argue that it isolated Russia from Western Europe, fostering a more autocratic political tradition. Others contend that it inadvertently strengthened the Russian Orthodox Church and contributed to the eventual rise of a powerful centralized state capable of resisting future invasions. You look out over the vast, snow-covered plains, no longer a landscape of fear, but a canvas of endless possibilities. The emotional arc here is one of profound hope and the birth of a nation, a testament to the enduring human spirit that, even after centuries of oppression, finds a way to rise, to rebuild, and to forge its own destiny. The story of the Mongols. Conquest of Russes is not just a tale of winter and warfare, it is a series of resilience, adaptation, and the ultimate triumph of a people over seemingly insurmountable odds. As the final echoes of the Mongol invasion fade into the long cold history of Rus, you find yourself reflecting on the incredible journey we've undertaken. From the fragmented principalities of 13th century Russes, through the terrifying efficiency of the Mongol winter riders, the brutal fall of cities like Ryazan and Vladimir, the mysterious reprieve of Novgorod, and the defiant stand of Kozelsk, to the centuries of adaptation under the Golden Horde and the eventual resurgence of Moscow. It is a saga woven with threads of despair, resilience, and ultimate triumph. The question that began our journey, how did a steppe army conquer Russia in the dead of winter, has been answered not by a single factor, but by a complex interplay of military genius, environmental adaptation, and the tragic disunity of the Russ's princes. The Mongols, far from being hindered by the brutal Russian winter, turned it into their most formidable ally, using frozen rivers as highways and their hardy ponies to outmaneuver and overwhelm their foes. You might not realise it, but this period of intense hardship and foreign domination forged a new Rus, a people hardened by adversity, whose identity was shaped by the very struggle for survival. Listen to the soft, rhythmic whisper of the wind through the bare branches of ancient trees, a sound that has witnessed centuries of human struggle and endurance. Feel the deep, quiet pulse of the earth beneath your feet, a constant, unchanging presence that holds the memories of all who have walked upon it. Here's a historical fact. The Mongol invasion and the subsequent period of the Golden Horde profoundly influenced the development of the Russian state, contributing to the centralization of power, the strengthening of the Orthodox Church, and shaping its geopolitical outlook for centuries to come. You stand on the vast, snow-covered plains, no longer a landscape of fear, but a canvas of endless possibilities. The emotional arc here is one of profound reflection, a sense of having witnessed a pivotal moment in history and understanding the deep, lasting impact it had on a nation and its people. But beyond the grand sweep of empires and battles, this is also a story of individual human experience. It is the story of the hunter in the forest, the merchant in Novgorod, the craftsman in Kozelsk, the peasant under the yoke. It is the story of ordinary people facing extraordinary circumstances, finding courage in the face of terror, hope in the depths of despair, and resilience in the face of unimaginable loss. The human spirit, much like the enduring Russian winter, proved capable of withstanding the harshest conditions, adapting, surviving, and ultimately finding a way to thrive. The long winter of conquest eventually gave way to the spring of liberation, and from the crucible of the Golden Horde, a new, unified Russian state emerged, carrying with it the indelible marks of its past, but also the promise of a future forged in the fires of adversity. Feel the gentle warmth of a distant hearth, a small persistent glow that symbolises the enduring flame of human spirit and community. The faint scent of wood smoke, though ancient, now carries a note of peace, a promise of comfort and continuity. Scholars debate the precise moment the Mongol yoke truly ended, but the Great Stand on the Ugra River in 1480 is widely regarded as the symbolic turning point, a bloodless victory that marked the final liberation of Rus from foreign domination. You close your eyes, and in the quiet darkness, you can almost hear the echoes of those who lived through these times, their fears, their hopes, their struggles, and their triumphs. Their story is a testament to the enduring power of human resilience, a reminder that even in the darkest of winters, the seeds of spring are always waiting to bloom. The emotional arc here is one of peaceful resolution, a sense of closure, and a profound appreciation for the strength of the human spirit. Thank you for joining me on this immersive journey through one of history's most brutal and transformative periods. The tale of how Mongol armies conquered Russia despite brutal winters is not just a historical account. It is a profound meditation on adaptation, survival, and the enduring spirit of a people. If this story resonated with you, if it helped you find a moment of calm or sparked your curiosity, please consider liking this video and subscribing to the channel for more immersive historical sleep stories. Your support helps us continue to explore these fascinating chapters of the past. And as you drift off to sleep tonight, perhaps you'll carry with you the quiet strength of those who endured the winter of conquest, finding peace in the knowledge that even the longest, coldest night eventually gives way to dawn. What aspect of this story resonated most with you? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Until next time, sleep well, and may your dreams be filled with the echoes of history.